Hi, I'm Nolan Siegel, and you're listening to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast.
Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. And as we said last week, we have another very special guest joining us this week. This week is the driver of the number 6 Arrow McLaren Chevrolet, Nolan Siegel. Nolan, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, first of all, how are you doing? Obviously, you had quite a big crash at Toronto. So how's recovery been from that? And what have you sort of been doing in the long break you've had since Toronto?
Yeah, doing fine. Obviously, Toronto was a bummer, but everyone was fine. So, no physical recovery involved from that for me or Pato, or anyone else that I know of. So, yeah, it was nice to get a bit of a break. Obviously, the season before that and now going into the final stretch, it's packed in pretty tight. So, nice to get some time off. Took a week off and then been in the sim, had a test at Gateway, and kind of fully focused on starting this final push strong.
How did the Gateway test go? How are things shaping up there ahead of returning to IndyCar action next weekend?
Good. It was my first time there in the IndyCar, so a little bit of getting up to speed for me, but I think it went really well. I think we'll have a strong car, as Arrow McLaren always does at ovals. So I'm excited for it, and I think going into a weekend having done a test will be a nice change for me.
So the Olympics have kind of been on. Have you been watching them? And if so, could you envision yourself kind of doing any of the sports? And if so, which one?
I love watching the Olympics, just watching. I think, I don't know if I would be good at any of them. Maybe, I don't know. I do some sailing in my free time. I think I could possibly contribute something, but I don't know. I don't think it would go very well.
America keep on nicking the British medals, so we need to get one back on you.
I'm not going to apologize.
How do you feel things have gone in your early stages at Arrow McLaren? And you've obviously done a couple of races there, so how have you sort of reflected in your early stages?
I think it's actually gone quite well. It has, it's challenging. IndyCar is super competitive, and it's a lot to learn. So, obviously doing it with a new group of people and in a new environment it's a challenge, but I've really enjoyed it. And I think we're all making a lot of progress every weekend, and that's all we can really ask for at this stage. So I think the results will start to come if we continue focusing on, doing everything correctly. So I think we're on the right path right now for sure.
And we look back at the start of the season, your initial plan was to be with Dale Coyne Racing. First, we did 3 championship races. So was there an intention to keep a rookie status ahead of stepping up potentially next year before plans changed, obviously?
That was the plan. The plan for me was to do Indy Next full-time. That was kind of my full-time deal. The opportunity came up to run with Dale for a few races. So, I thought it would be great experience, and it was great experience. And, I'd hoped to be full-time in IndyCar in 2025, but, I was definitely not going to turn down an offer to run with Arrow McLaren this year to keep my rookie status for next year. So that was the plan originally, but things changed quite rapidly.
And I guess the biggest, or at least one of the biggest experiences of your season so far has been the Indy 500, obviously. I know you didn't quite make the cut for the race, but I think everyone would say the effort you put in was pretty valiant, especially bouncing back from the crash you had on Fast Friday. So can you just take us through that experience and the emotional roller coaster that you had back in May?
Yeah, it was one of the most difficult, months of my life, for sure. We knew it was going to be difficult going in, right? It just was. So obviously it went a little bit worse than anyone had thought. But at the end of the day, I think for me, it was super valuable. I learned a huge amount from it, and I don't regret it at all. So, I think at the end of the day, if it makes me better and I get the opportunity to go for it again, I'm going to be better in 2025 than I was in 2024. And I've had a lot of times this year that I've kind of been thrown into the deep end, and that was certainly one of them. So, you can just kind of look at it, learn from it, and move on from it. I don't think there's really anything else to do.
And we've seen the likes of your current teammate Pato not make the race on his first attempt. I guess, how do you not take it too harshly? And are there any specific things you feel you have really learned from that experience?
It's a tough one because when you're in it, it's super important, right? It was extremely important to me to make the race, and it's extremely disappointing when something like that happens. But I think focusing on the future and taking some of the positives from it is the right approach. And ultimately, it's not going to be the last time that I have a difficult week in motorsport. No matter who you are, who you drive for, what series you're racing in, there are going to be difficult moments. And I think the most valuable thing that I learned from that whole experience was kind of the mentality needed to push through something like that. And I think that was probably the most difficult situation that, you could possibly think of in any motorsport in the world. So I think I can kind of look back on that and remember what we did and how we worked through it and use that approach in the future.
Sort of in the week building up to the race, there was a slight rumour you might step into Carl Larson's car if he prioritised the Coke 600. Was this ever remotely true, or was this just a myth?
It was talked about. Ultimately, it didn't end up happening. I don't think that it was ever a high possibility, but I was happy to do it if the opportunity came my way. So, there were conversations, but ultimately, I don't think, it was never planned.
And obviously, in the Indy 500, you sort of started your bond with Tony Kanaan. So first of all, how did that come around? And then how has that developed as you've moved to Arrow McLaren and sort of he's helped your own progression? Yeah,
Tony was extremely helpful for me during the 500 and has been extremely helpful, since then. And luckily, we're working together now. I didn't really know Tony at all. I had met him briefly, but there's so much experience in the paddock that I think, everyone kind of knew what I was going through during qualifying week at the 500. And Tony was around. I'd reached out to a few people and, people were willing to have conversations and help out. And I talked to Tony and kind of just asked, like, hey, is there any advice you can give me? Anything, you think that I should be doing? And he was nice enough to step in and, involve himself more than, I ever thought he would. So really grateful that he was, willing to do that. And I'm glad that it led to the relationship we have now.
You can say that the ball started rolling on full-time, like step up to IndyCar with your appearance in Road America. Can you kind of talk us through kind of like what you was feeling about that and about the call up and kind of stepping away from Indy Next and stepping into an IndyCar car?
Yeah, that was a very interesting weekend. Went into the weekend, even like the Friday, thinking that I was racing Indy Next and no possibility of IndyCar. That was not planned at all before Friday afternoon. So I was actually in the Indy Next car, starting the practice session, and got a radio call, came to pit lane, and told me to get out. So I was like, that's kind of odd. So I got out, and that was the first time that I had heard anything about the possibility of racing the IndyCar. So from that point, like literally didn't take my suit off, went in, put my seat in the IndyCar, rolled the IndyCar out, started the practice session, and off we went. So there was not a lot of time to think about that. But after that weekend, it started to become more clear that there might be an opportunity to be full-time in IndyCar for the rest of the year. There were kind of a few talks happening. That was before, obviously, this deal was done, and before the opportunity came about to race with Arrow McLaren. But there were a few things in the works, and figured it would be better to focus full-time on IndyCar, and luckily it worked out, and it doesn't look like a stupid decision at this point, when I think if things had gone differently, it could have.
Briefly stepping away from IndyCar, you had the opportunity to compete at your first Le Mans this year, and obviously you found yourself in victory lane, obviously after an excellent 24 hours. So first of all, how did the call come around? You obviously did a lot of experience in sports cars before, and how did you find their experience? I'm sure it was only made better by the final result.
Yeah, I've done endurance racing for my whole career. It's been a big part of my career up until now, and did a full season of LMP2 and IMSA last year, did Asian Le Mans, and had kind of built a relationship with some folks at United, and Bijoy obviously is full time in that car in ELMS and IMSA, and we grew up karting together. We've raced together for ages, and it all kind of just made sense. So really grateful to everyone at United for having me in that car for that race. It was definitely a risk to put two rookies in the same car. It took a bit of convincing on my end to kind of tell them like, no, I won't do anything stupid. Please let me drive the car. So, yeah. And the result, obviously, we know what happened. So I'm glad it worked out, and would love to continue doing more endurance racing in the future.
Did you ever dream of potentially winning? And then what point in the race did you sort of realize, hang on, we've got a pretty good chance of sealing this?
I'd absolutely dreamed of it. I didn't honestly go into that weekend thinking. We knew we had a relatively strong lineup, but I don't think any of us thought, with two rookies, like we were just going to go out and win it the first time. And it wasn't until late in the race that we realized like we were the car to beat. For me, my last stint, so kind of the second to last block of the race, was when I kind of realized we were in it. I got in the car and we were running kind of like fourth or fifth the whole race and sitting there. And I got in kind of for like that really early morning stint. And as the sun came up, it got hotter. The car started to come alive and we got really fast. And I went from fifth to first, and then we pulled out like, 20 or 30 seconds. And that was when it kind of became clear that like there was a good chance of winning the race. So that was a pretty fun time of the race, and a fun few hours of leading and showing the pace that we had at the end. So but it was not like a dominant performance through the whole race where we knew we were gonna be the car to beat. It wasn't until really late.
And Zach Brown is obviously involved with United Autosports. Did you really have much contact with him prior to joining Arrow McLaren? And how did that relationship with him, and obviously TK as well, kind of help with getting this move to Arrow McLaren done?
Yeah, I did not have much contact with him. Obviously, he does run United, and he was at Le Mans, so I got to spend some time with him there. I'd met him briefly beforehand, and it's a small world in all of motorsport, so we knew who each other were, obviously. But no, Le Mans was kind of the first time that we really got to spend time together and get to know each other, and I'm glad that was the weekend that we were able to do that, and ultimately I think helped massively in putting me here. So very grateful to have been in that situation.
You've raced on kind of every type of track so far. What's like the biggest lesson and like challenges since you've kind of made your way up into IndyCar, and like what kind of things have you had to adapt to since Indy Next?
Yeah, IndyCar is unique in that of all race series, certainly pavement racing. I think IndyCar does the most variety of different circuits, right? We do big ovals, small ovals, street circuits, and road courses, and they all have their unique challenges. And I think Indy Next prepares you well for IndyCar because we go to all of those. Apart from big super speedways, we go to all of the different types of circuits. But everything's just more difficult in IndyCar, to be honest. It's the same idea and it's the same principles everywhere. You just have to kind of perfect everything. And I think the biggest difference in IndyCar is that everyone in the field is really good and there are no teams that are, massively lacking. So if you're not, really on it, you end up really deep in the field. So it's very easy to, no matter who you are or what car you're in, it's really easy to kind of make a mistake and end up way in the back. It doesn't cost you 2 positions, it costs you 20. So it just requires a lot more precision.
Do you sort of feel any extra expectation upon yourself when you sort of find yourself in the car that has had so much uncertainty and turbulence throughout the course of the last 12 months?
No, to be honest, all the pressure I feel comes from myself for the most part. I don't feel like outside, people can say whatever they want. I don't really care. There's obviously, yes, it's a high profile seat. It's a high profile team. And there are lots of people that think they know what they're looking at, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what they say. It matters to me, how I perform. And if I feel like I have performed at the best of my ability, and it matters to me if, the people at the team that I respect and work closely with think that I'm doing a good job. So as long as a group, we continue doing the best that we can do, the results are going to come, and everyone else will see it too.
I know we're running a little bit tight for time, so we've just got one more proper one, and then we've got a fun question to end on. But I was just wondering, kind of, what are your goals now from here until the end of the season, progressing into next year? And I guess how have your expectations and your goals changed from when you first stepped into the coin car earlier in the year to now?
Yeah, the goal with all the races at Coin, I had very little experience, very little testing, and the goal was just gaining experience. Now it's a little bit different where, I've done a few races, I've done a test, we're getting into our rhythm, and I think that we are becoming more result focused. But at the end of the day, the background kind of goal we're always thinking about is coming out as strong as we can, St. Pete 2025. For the rest of the season, it would be really nice to have some good results, but I think that we can, focus a little bit more on making sure that I learn as much as possible, that the team learns as much as possible, and we get to know each other well. And I think that we can get pretty aggressive where, this year we'd love some really good results. If we get a bad result by, being super aggressive, I don't think we're super fussed about it. Obviously the car is not in the championship or anything. So we're going to try and kind of take some big swings and see if we can produce some really good results.
Nice. It's been fun to see your progress. Ellie, do you ask this final one?
Yeah. So with all our driver guests, we've been asking them to create a kind of playlist, and with each driver, we've asked them to add on 2 songs each. So
Two
if you
songs.
could, you give us 2 songs.
Any songs?
Yeah,
Any
any
songs.
2 could be anything.
Any songs?
I will
Sorry for putting you on
add
the spot.
my bird-related song of "Fly Away" and "Californication."
Cool.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Close to home, that last one.
I've got to say, I love the Seagull, was it?
The
Underlayer. Love it.
How did that come about, that fire suit?
So, my longtime kind of spotter, coach, manager, he runs the US division of HRX, the suit and Nomex company. So he's always kind of made me joke Nomex and suits just for fun. So for Christmas, I'll get a funny shirt. So it was just a joke.
It's an awesome joke. It's a good one. Anyway, Nolan, that's all we've got for you. I really appreciate you spending your hard time speaking to us. Obviously, welcome back on the podcast anytime. Wish you the best of luck for the remaining 5 rounds of the season. Hopefully, you get your first top 10. You may be even better than that. So best of luck for the rest of the season ahead. And thanks for joining us.
Cheers, Nolan.
Thanks for having me.
So that's Nolan Siegel on his 2024 season. A bit of insight to his early days at McLaren as well. Stepping into Juncos. Le Mans is a period of Dale Coyne racing. And we, of course, thank Nolan for his time and Arrow McLaren for organising the opportunity. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I know we certainly did. And hopefully more drivers in the future. We said it would be a good one in the off-season. We're hopefully going to be working on a few things. You never know, we might get some in a couple of months' time. But if you want to support Nolan for the rest of the year and heading into 2025, which, as he said, was his goal to start St. Petersburg as strong as possible, if you want to get ready for them, you can always support Nolan and Arrow McLaren by picking up his merchandise, which, of course, you can do at Formula Model Shop, the best place to get your IndyCar merchandise in the UK and the rest of Europe.
You can use the discount code 5BOMB, or one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for a link to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
The Seagull cap actually has about a £5 off discount in the minute, so now is the right time to pick it up. And if you want to head to the Formula Model Shop website, you can use the banner on the homepage of the DIVEBOMB website or head to formulamodelshop.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
Just for the rest of the episode, me and Archie are going to reflect on Nolan Siegel, as well as go over some news which has happened last week. Obviously, IndyCar returns at Gateway next week. Unfortunately, Ellie isn't with us for the second half of this episode, but she's back home next week. So she'll join us back for the Gateway review. But that was Nolan Siegel, obviously. 20 minutes or so with Nolan, talking about some of the standout moments, whether that was his victory in Le Mans, the very turbulent month of May, and then the call up to Juncos, and how that quickly developed into a move to Arrow McLaren. And sort of interesting, his targets all lie 2025 at the minute. It's just sort of learning year between now and Nashville.
Yeah, I thought there was some really interesting stuff in there. I think especially kind of the timeline from Road America onwards. I think he mentioned there were a few discussions maybe before that, but obviously things really got kick-started, and I guess Arrow McLaren entered the fray after that. And I thought it was also interesting just kind of inferring what he was saying about Zach Brown and the fact that he didn't really know Zach that well until Le Mans. And it was only, days after Le Mans that he was actually announced to be driving for Arrow McLaren. So the fact that he said that relationship helped, again, it kind of gives a bit of perspective as to how quickly things came about. And I think his maturity really kind of shone through. He's a young guy, he's 19 years old, but I liked what he said about, sort of, Dan, when you asked about his feeling as to whether there was any extra pressure or expectation being in that number 6 car, which has had so much drama from Palou to Malukas to Porsche via Ilott. It's been chaotic, but I like that he very firmly kind of said, you know what, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about the noise. I focus on myself, and if the team have faith in me, then that's kind of all I care about. And I think, that speaks really well to his mentality. And, he's got a multi-year deal, and I guess it's kind of just reflecting, he knows that it can be a process and the results aren't going to come immediately. And as he said, he can maybe take some risks in these last few races this season as he just continues to get up to speed. So, yeah, I thought there was loads of really interesting stuff in there. I don't know if there's anything in particular you would pick out from it.
Yeah, I think Le Mans stuff, again, he didn't expect a victory into the closing few hours, and sort of seen from his suggestions that he wasn't initially in the fray to race at Le Mans. It was him asking the team, let me race, trust me. And obviously it ends up being good maneuver. We got the Carl Larson rumour debunked, where he had a slightly wry smile on his face. As you said, there were discussions about him potentially stepping in. Obviously, we know Carl decided to prioritise the Indy 500, but I found that slightly interesting. I think Road America started to me the most, where he didn't actually know stepping out the car. We obviously knew the whole situation, but he was just told to step out the car, no context at all. He had no decision in moving to Juncos for the weekend. He was straight in the deep end. And as we said in that episode, he did a fairly respectable effort considering the circumstances.
Yeah, I didn't know what the timeline was there, whether kind of, obviously we knew he'd stepped out mid-Indy next practice, which did kind of suggest, this is something that had come up immediately, but I didn't know whether the timeline had got a bit confused at some point, and maybe he did know and he still intended to do NXT, but no, he found out there and then. I just thought as well, kind of, it was interesting to get his reflections on the 500, obviously being, 2.5, 3 months down the line. Astonishingly, time's gone very, very quickly since then. But just to get his perspective, and again, that kind of word maturity, that, he said it was one of the most difficult months of his life, but actually he has been able to take stuff from it and learn from it and kind of take the positives to almost grow as a driver. So I think just everything about him was really, really impressive. And I have full confidence that, despite what people kind of believed and all of the, say, controversy around Porsche stepping out, having signed that rest of season possible multi-year deal, I have full faith that Siegel really has the character and the caliber to go on and succeed.
Let's go back to the Road America incident, because Nolan Siegel stood in for Canapino, and now there's a question mark on who stands in for Canapino for the rest of the year, because the major news this week is that Augustin Canapino and Juncos Racing have parted ways for the remainder of 2024 and obviously into the 2025 season. It ends sort of a fairy tale story, which has gone a bit sour. It was the movement of Canapino last year, this complete unknown quantity from racing in Argentine touring cars all his life, and he comes in and performs pretty admirably in his first season, but obviously it all goes a bit downhill with pretty disgusting online abuse and all peaking at Road America. And it hasn't been a good season for Canapino. That car is still outside the leader circle. He's been a bit messy at times. And yeah, compared to how Romain Grosjean's performed, it's not been sort of the step up we'd like to see drivers have in their second season. So they've obviously agreed to part ways, and that will end Canapino's IndyCar career. Yeah, as I said, a fairy tale story gone a bit sour, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it was kind of necessary ultimately, because you look at those Juncos racing cars and the side pods are pretty bare. They don't have many sponsors, which just makes that leader circle contract, which is believed to be around $1 million extra for the teams that finish in the top 22 of entrant points. That's taking away 2 of the Ganassi cars, because teams are only allowed 3 entries eligible for the leader circle. So yeah, I mean, it ultimately had to happen. He'd shown speed, and that was on multiple tracks as well. His last couple of races, for the second Iowa race, he qualified 10th, made the Fast 12 for the first time to qualify 10th in Toronto. But it was just the execution of races just wasn't really quite there. And I think ultimately he didn't make the step up that I think people expected after what was a pretty impressive first year. He finished 12th on, I think, three occasions, and unfortunately only managed to match that once this year. And I think outside the first 2 races, he'd finished in the 20s, I think, all bar twice. So he's having too many incidents. He wasn't really showing what he needed to in the races. And I think with the ovals coming up, yeah, he was showing signs of being, a bit speedy. But you've got someone like Connor Daly available, and we don't know. I mean, by the time this podcast comes out, we're recording this segment on Sunday. The podcast will come out on Tuesday. There may be confirmation on Monday. We don't know. But I think Connor Daly, having tested for the team, is the one you would kind of expect. He's the best driver available that, has a bit of oval pedigree, well, more than a bit of oval pedigree. He's done really well over the years at Iowa, at Gateway, and maybe a bit of backing now as well with all this polka dot sponsorship. So I think it just all makes sense, and it probably won't be something that continues into next year, but this is something we see very often, that teams will ultimately, in kind of that desperate bid to make the leaders circle. It's obviously that entry on the outside edge, looking in by, I think, only one place at the moment, 5 points, but it's still perilously placed. But yeah, this was necessary, and it's not the ending that this story, which probably would have ended, I guess, at the end of this year anyway, with funding problems. It's not the way it should have ended. So it's just a bit of a shame.
A pink Juncos, maybe. Be interesting. Add some
That would
colour.
be interesting. Yeah, what happens if polka dot sponsor Juncos? That would certainly be interesting.
So as we said, probably Daly for the 4 ovals. Obviously, he himself has never raced at Nashville or Milwaukee. He might have done Milwaukee. I have no idea. We might have to verify that. Let me have a look. He has raced at Milwaukee, actually. I stand corrected. No, he hasn't. Ignore me. We'll go around in circles. Connor Daly's not raced at Milwaukee, and he's not raced at Nashville either. It's a bit weird. I mean, it's where you got 3 the last 3 races are all on new circuits. So it's a bit of a throw into the deep end. I guess the question mark remains over Portland. Daly's not obviously incompetent on road courses. He is still very respectable as a road course driver. We've seen suggestions it might be Di Francesco, because as we sort of mentioned last week, he might be looking at stepping up with Juncos next year. So maybe him. They might stick Daly in for all the races. I think that's probably a safer option, but money talks as well in the IndyCar series. So we will wait and see what happens with that one. Coyne haven't technically announced a driver for Gateway either, but expect that to be Catherine Legg. But as I said, not confirmed yet. Keep an eye on our socials, you'll find out.
Yeah, I just want to say as well, I think it's been quite unfair seeing some of the flack that Conor Daly's been getting on social media for, he's kind of been biting back, and that's a whole different argument that we won't get into, whether that's kind of the right thing to do. But it's been quite unfair, people kind of saying, oh, there's so many better options. When you look at what he's done and how he is respected in the paddock, he stepped into, obviously, the coin car recently when Harvey had his physical issues. They called Conor Daly. Last year, he stepped in on ovals for Myers Shank. He stepped in on ovals for Rahal Lesman Lanigan. So he's about as good a kind of super sub as you can get on ovals. And this is a guy with 3 successive top 10 finishes in the Indy 500. I don't know why people have this perception of him like he's some sort of slouch and it's like, why is he here? He's a really competent oval driver and about as good a choice that teams can make in this situation.
And a tick off another team which hasn't raced for. He's almost there now.
He did race for them in the Indy Pro equivalent.
I'm not counting that.
I'm not counting that. But
in IndyCar, it's just Penske and Ganassi to go for Conor Daly. So
it's quite a funny.
There's also the Arrow McLaren argument where it was Schmidt-Peterson, but we'll ignore that. But it's impressive. It's like Infinity Stones as Conor Daly. So
it's quite a sort of funny nugget that I think it was the Indy Pro 2000 equivalent in 2010. I think it was the Star Mazda Championship, it was called back then. Drove for Juncos Racing. So he would be reuniting with them in some ways. And kind of Juncos took on a lot of what Carlin was as well, and Daly raced for Carlin. So there's a few bits of familiarity there. Watch it just not be Daly now after all this. Go rogue.
Who do they go? If like Hunter Ray comes out again out of absolutely nowhere like he did last year, who knows? We'll find out. Keep an eye on our socials because that will give you the definitive answer. But we're being too careful with our wording for somebody who's not yet announced. So
if something else is announced tomorrow, you might not even hear this segment. Dan will probably edit it out.
If it comes out on Tuesday or something, it'll be very embarrassing, but we'll see. Anyway, talking of other driver announcements, as we sort of expected all year, but there's kind of been announced quite late. Juri Vips is having a run out. He's coming in at Portland, as he did last year, racing in the 75, which Sato raced the Indy 500. We spoke about last week. We expect Vips to potentially step up next year. He's been a test and reserve driver for the team all year, and he obviously made his IndyCar debut at Portland last year. And look, he's not going to have a race unless the team has some serious interest in him and want to assess him in some way. You don't put someone in for absolutely no reason, especially in a 4th entry for Vips. So they are going out their way to make this possible for him. So nice to see him back. Another F2 driver, and probably deserves a shot. They've been saying how well he's done in the sim work, both the IndyCar team and the IMSA Sports Car Championship team. So good to see Vips back, as I said. And I think there's a bit more of a reaffirmation that he's probably going to be in the car next year. I think he said earlier on he wants to do ovals. He can't do that because he hasn't done the testing. But a nice little run out for Juri before the end of the season, and I fully expect him to, even more so than did last week, to step up in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, there's not masses to add, really. It makes sense, obviously, having been so heavily involved this season, going to different races, whether IndyCar, whether IMSA, doing kind of simulator work, just being around the team. I think, it was said from even before the season that they were going to try and get Vips in a car at some point this year. And I guess with this oval swing late in the season, Portland was only really the viable option, aside from maybe if you decided to do Toronto possibly. But RLL have this kind of recent history, don't they, of testing drivers. It seems to be quite their way of essentially seeing who is a viable fit for their seats. And Vips obviously has experience of Portland from last year. I think that race was quite a physical challenge for him, if I remember correctly, above anything. He finished somewhere in the 20s, not 18th. Right. Oh, did he? Okay, he qualified. Did he qualify 24th, if I remember correctly, and then made his way up to 18th?
Some impressive knowledge, if you remember that correctly.
Oh, wait and
I'll
suspense.
have a look. He did qualify 18th.
He qualified 18th, did he?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I don't know who I'm thinking of then.
What position did you say?
I thought he qualified 24th. I don't know.
That was David Malukas, just so you know.
Okay, well, I don't know who I'm thinking of, to be quite honest. Probably one of the other RLL stand-ins from over the years that that I've written about at some point. But okay, so that's even better than I thought he did at Portland last year, because maybe I'm getting confused with Tom Blomqvist, actually,
Maybe.
who I think struggled quite a bit at Portland, I remember him saying. But Vips also, that was kind of just a physical challenge above everything. But obviously then going into Laguna Seca, the following race, I know definitively he qualified 7th there before an engine penalty knocked him back to 13th, which kind of put him in mid-pack and then led to him being caught up in the first corner melee, which was just unfortunate because, I mean, that was serious pace to show him qualifying and in his second race for the team. So, yeah, there's potential, and I mean, it's a small sample size at the moment, and that will be expanded come Portland. So, interested to see what happens. And hopefully he qualifies better than 24th, which he didn't even qualify.
Big unnecessarily harsh in. One small other bit of news, which you probably should know, it's a bit boring. Rossi's been confirmed fit, which isn't a surprise considering he's had 4 weeks to recover. But
yeah, I mean, it shuts up the conspiracy theorists who are like, this is it, this is Rossi, this is him done in Arrow McLaren, they're making another change. No, Rossi is absolutely fine. I've been listening to Off Track and he's made swimming progress. He's been going to see, he visited his horse that he now owns or something, some race horse, and his thumb, I think he posted progression on Instagram, on his Instagram story, and it looks pretty normal now. So yeah, that's good news.
Yeah, so he's passed off to discussing it, but yeah, no more conspiracies. Last week we said we'd bring you Ellie's predictions for the 2025 grid, so we'll do that now whilst we have a bit of time. Ganassi was the same as myself and Archie, below Dixon Simpson, Penske and McLaren, as we spoke about last week, are locked in. Andretti was the same. Foyt, she went for Ferrucci and Rob. RLL was Rahal, Vips, and slightly different with Alexander Rossi. So we've all predicted Rossi to 3 different teams, so see how that works. MSR to stay the same. ECR for VK Rasmussen, and then an Armstrong question mark. So I don't know what the question mark's for, but maybe an expansion for Carpenter. Juncos, Grosjean on Daly, Coyne, Sowery, and Fittipaldi, and then Prema, Sargent, and Paul Scher. So predictions. So
I quite like the Fittipaldi shout for Coyne. I didn't think of that, but he has budget, doesn't he? Apparently, I mean, I've kind of seen it reported places that 5 Hour Energy is a Fittipaldi sponsor. So
he's done a lot of sponsors, hasn't he? He's weird purple one at the start of the year.
Yeah, very marketable. Brazilian driver and generally pretty marketable. So yeah, he
used to race for the team.
Yeah. So he might be in a good shot, actually. That's a good shot. I don't know why we didn't think of that.
Yeah, well, you never know if Coyne do. That's why I don't think of these.
We shall see. We'll revisit next year when the grid is locked in and see how ridiculous we all look.
Well, we never got the chance this year because we're 1 month away from the season finale. We still don't know the grid the rest of the season.
That is very true. So that is very true.
Might be 2026 by the time you get our 2025 predictions. Continue to let us know your predictions. By the way, if you have any bold predictions, to let us know. If there's someone we've forgotten again, let us know. We'll like to see your predictions if they're any different to ours. But as we said, between now and Nashville, we should have a few releases in regards to market news. We'll obviously keep you updated. And then throughout the off season, because we have 6 months to keep you up to date with all the off seasoning stuff. So,
just a note: Tom Blomqvist did indeed finish 24th in Portland.
So
I think that might be who I was thinking of. Although I'm not sure. I definitely don't know who I was thinking of for qualifying 24th. But
somewhere, someone qualified 24th. Who you're trying to think of. And next week is Gateway, as we said. It does feel ages since Toronto, doesn't it? And we were all on holiday during Toronto. But anyway, I know it's not the Fast Six next week, so we can't call it the Fast Six Predictor Tournament. So for this week, I wouldn't say this week only because it isn't, but for this week, it's a top 6 Predictor Tournament. I know I said we'll update standings. We'll give them to you at the close of play next week. But give us a minute and you'll have our top 6 predictions for the Gateway. So I have gone for triple Penske. As you know, it's a dangerous strategy, but I'm braving it. Herta Palou Award.
Yeah, I have gone for triple Penske, which proved a horrific strategy last time I tried it, but I've gone for it again, and I've gone for Herta Palou Award.
Oh wow! I'm the first time I heard it. It's not exactly the same prediction, but I can't see anybody else. So.
The only difference was a bit of a flip flop. I couldn't decide whether to go for Dixon or Palou, but I went for Palou in the end.
All right, we'll see how true that comes. That might be no. New Garland qualified quite badly in Iowa, didn't they? So
yeah,
that's not the same one as Iowa, but whatever. So yeah, that's the break over with. The Olympic break's over. No more Olympics era diff, as we were speaking about last week. Many fantastic calls, even if half of them were the British being overtaken. But oh well, we did get embarrassed in the relay like some other countries. So we still have the anytimes.
I am sad the Olympics are over. It's been fun. And some of the drivers seem to have been enjoying it as well.
Yeah, Simpson was sprint. Seagulls said he was all over it. So
and congratulations to Alex Palou, who won the women's water polo as Spain's goalkeeper. If you don't know what we're referencing, it is uncanny how much Spain's female goalkeeper looks like Alex Palou in water polo of all sports.
I'll find out her name for you. Her name is Martina Terre. So I've butchered the pronunciation. But search her up because there's lookalikes which are like vague lookalikes, and then there's just like
I've never seen anything like it.
It is like you said this the other week, but it's like Alex Palou put the female face filter on himself or something. It is uncanny.
It's incredible.
Not quite the same, but Will Power took gold in the high jump.
Yeah, it was resembled him slightly.
Resembled him. That's
rightish part of the world.
Yes. So if there's any other IndyCar Olympian lookalikes, let us know. But the female Palou will always slightly haunt me, I think. More so Alex Palou, probably. And it's the fact they're from the same country as well. So
yeah, that part
gets even odder. And yeah, if you want your diff fix, now the athletics is over, you'll have to go to the NASCAR because he's confirmed to go over to the NASCAR booth now for the rest of the season. So yeah, that's his area. So it's fun watching track and field, and Olympics is in America next time. So I don't know how they're going to get IndyCar involved. Maybe Connor Daly runs with the torch down in Indiana or something.
I saw something on Twitter. I can't remember from who or where, but it might have been the triathlon is going to be right by the Long Beach circuit.
Nice.
So that's something.
I didn't realize they planned it this far in advance.
No, I know. Red Hot Chili Peppers played the closing ceremony handover bit, so they didn't play Nolan Siegel's chosen song for our playlist. But actually, if we remember, we need to link that playlist, the driver playlist, in the description.
It's been made finally.
Yeah. We've finally put it together. Well, Dan's finally put it together.
We've had enough drivers to justify bringing it together now. So I believe there's 10 songs in the playlist and expect that to be added to in the off season, hopefully. But a real mix in there. If you haven't listened to it, I've never heard such a mix in music. If you haven't listened to all the interview episodes, your challenge is to guess which driver has picked which song.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm haunted by the words off season. This time in just over a month, we will be contemplating that fact, and 6 more months of trying to slog through quizzes and news and hopefully interviews and whatever else we may muster.
Yeah, I think we're a bit more planned today, but we'll get to January, we'll be absolutely stuffed.
Yeah, so. Last year we thought it was going to be a struggle, didn't we? And actually, in the end, off-seasoning, we had about 10 editions of off-seasoning, so awaiting the return.
Awaiting the return, off-seasoning part 11 to your screen soon. But in fairness, we have the driver review, the season review, and then we've got the driver reviews part 1 and 2. So it'll be a while before we get some off-seasoning episodes.
But there's so much to come between now and then. Will Power is only 49 points back from Alex Palou in the championship. Scott Dixon 53, Colton Herta 57. Campasso Ward being outside contender 71 back. Scott McLaughlin 83. It's probably about as far as
now it's getting a bit unrealistic at this point. But yeah, it's a big event. Right, short oval. We still know it's Pelot's weak point. Well, we say weak point. It's his less good point. Gateway is his worst track on the schedule, I think. If you calculate it by best finish, his best finish there is 7th across the 5 times he's raced there. So great chance for Power, great chance for Dixon, good chances for Herter, Ward and McLaughlin to crawl back anything they have in a championship context. So, as you said, it could be quite a big weekend. We'll obviously keep you updated, but it has felt like a mini off-season. It's been a while, but as we said, we've had some great interviews. You've had Kiffin Simpson on. If you haven't listened to that episode, listen to that already. We've had a bit longer with Kiffin, and then obviously I hope you enjoyed this episode with Nolan Siegel. Great to have some drivers on. It's been a little while, but we really hope you enjoyed it. Some real good exclusives in there. From 2 very similar drivers, very similar age, both did Le Mans, both very similar stages of their careers. But that's all we've got time for this week. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. And we will finally see you next time when IndyCar heads to